We'll get back to the original footprint, with the exception of the agents there to do the fraud investigation. Will stay there and continue their work until they're done. The agents investigating the church issue, where the people went into the church, they'll stay and get that work done. But there will be a small force, a security force, what we call RFQs. That will our security forces that will respond to when our agents are out and they get surrounded by agitators and things get out of control.
Border Czar Tom Homan giving an update in Minnesota as ICE agents begin to wrap up some of their operations following thousands of illegal alien arrests and as the multi-billion-dollar fraud investigation intensifies. Joining us to discuss is Minnesota State Representative Nolan West. Thank you, sir, for joining us this morning. We appreciate it. Tell us what you're seeing on the ground there in Minnesota right now and how that's changed over the past month.
It's been drastically changed since Tom Homan came to town, which exactly what I was hoping would happen. We're seeing a less visible enforcement effort, and Director ICE Todd Lyons and Tom Homan also expressed we want a targeted approach, and that's what we're seeing. None of the stuff we've been seeing in the media, people walking down the street. Now they're going in a much more targeted approach, so we're not having protesters roam the city anymore. The
riots that we've been seeing, and we often see just a snapshot from the media, really of the temperature of what's happening in a location and of some residents there. What are your constituents, though, telling you?
Well, they're glad to see Minnesota be in the national news less when there are riots every day. That was not the case. But they're also happy to see the targeted approach. Even red or blue, a targeted approach works a lot better because the goal is to get dangerous illegal aliens out of the country as soon as possible, and we'll figure out a way to deal with the rest.
And that's really what the goal was from the bounce. So why do we see so many state lawmakers fighting this? Why didn't they just agree to this at the beginning?
Well, Democrats have a strong man problem because people generally view them as weak, according to all the polling. So this is their effort to make themselves look strong. But it comes at the detriment to their constituents. What we need is governments to work together so that we can get dangerous illegal aliens out of the country and make our communities safer without causing undue destruction.
I got to ask you about, speaking of destruction, I got to ask you about some of the damage from rioters. What do you make of the demands of Governor Tim Walz demanding that U.S. taxpayers reimburse his state? How about the state reimburse American taxpayers for getting criminal illegal aliens off the streets of Minnesota? Or how about Minnesota reimburse American taxpayers for the billions of dollars stolen under his watch?
Yeah, that is basically a proposal to just have something to talk about during the legislative session, which starts today. So more asking for more money, very, very normal for Democrats, especially in Minnesota. But when you look at literal elected officials calling for businesses to go on strike and shut down, I don't know how you can put a voluntary shutdown promoted by local leaders as a cost on the U.S. taxpayer, or the Minnesota taxpayer for that matter.
Right. Speaking of which, how deep is this fraud investigation in your state? Will we see officials at the top held accountable for this?
Well, I doubt it, honestly. That's what we've seen. They hardly even resign in shame, which is what many of them should do. It keeps getting deeper. We've had literal government employees forge documents to try and look like they visited a site. Actually did their jobs to enforce this law, but that's not what we're seeing. I expect us to see billions of more fraud as it goes, but at least we're getting to the bottom of it now because we've been talking about this for a while and they've denied it exists, but now you cannot deny it.
Right, and you cannot deny what we're seeing also with Congresswoman Ilhan Omar's finances also under federal investigation. Is there any kind of investigation on the state level, and why do you think this was able to fly under the radar for so long?
No, I don't have privy to that information, but I assume there's nothing going on at the state level. Our investigators do great work, but they're rarely told to do great work. But I expect the Department of Justice to do their job, find the evidence required, and
So you think she's being protected? Do you think she's being protected by state leaders and state officials?
Well, I don't think they're excited to prosecute her or push any trials, but protected, I don't know if I'd use that term.
Right. Why do you think that is?
Well, we've had a Democrat administration in Minnesota for far too long. In 2009, we had a Republican governor, and hopefully we can return to that after this next election.
Deportations will continue in your state, and sanctuary policies are making those operations, as we talked about earlier, really make that more dangerous. Do you ever see a future where Minnesota cooperates with federal authorities?
Well, I'm sure the Democrats would love to cooperate with a Democrat president, but sadly, that's not how this should work. When it comes to dangerous criminals, we should be on the same team. And I hope we can make it there, because this was not good for Minnesota. I mean, some people are celebrating, but this was not good for Minnesota. I'm glad it's over, but we need to cooperate in the future.
Minnesota State Rep Nolan West, thank you for joining us this morning. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
The Trump administration has denied Minnesota law enforcement any access to the evidence involved in the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy. The decision coming shortly after White House border czar Tom Homan announced a drawdown of federal agents in the state. The National News Desk, Jeff Harris, joins us. And Jeff, Homan clarifying those comments about a possible end to Operation Metro Surge. What else can you tell us?
So Homan says a, quote, small security force is scheduled to stay in Minnesota after announcing last week the Trump administration's crackdown efforts were ending. Now, he didn't go into specific detail, but did say the security force will respond when agents get surrounded by agitators and scenes grow out of control. White House border czar Tom Homan announcing a small federal security force will remain in Minnesota even as most ICE and border agents begin to leave.
They'll remain for a short period of time just to make sure the coordination, the agreements we have with local and state law enforcement stay in place and they respond to a public safety threat.
Homan says over 1,000 agents have already left, with hundreds more scheduled to leave early this week. But those investigating the state's widespread fraud will be staying.
We'll stay there and continue their work until they're done. The agents investigating the church issue where the people went into the church, they'll stay and get that work done.
Now, Homan's comments come following repeated calls from state lawmakers that the federal government reimburse damages they claim were caused by immigration enforcement operations.
So we're calling on the federal government to fully step up, to provide direct financial assistance to our city, to stabilize our small businesses.
Homan responding in a separate interview, saying Minnesota leaders should be thankful the Trump administration made the state safer.
They were a sanctuary state. Their county jails weren't working with us across the state. So you know what? We fixed it. They ought to be saying thank you.
Meanwhile, Republican Minnesota State Representative Pam Altendorf is now questioning the integrity of voter roll data in Hennepin County, claiming she identified 3,000 active voter roll entries, missing key identifying information and potentially duplicate records.
There's missing information. There's situations that looks like it might be duplicate voters. There's a lot of voters over 100 years old that were born in 1926 or earlier.
According to Alpha News, 1900 was used as a placeholder birth year for voters who registered before 1983, since they weren't required to provide their date of birth. But Altendorf says, with the exception of Hennepin County, she's being blocked from accessing data in other counties.
Why is there such an effort to block us or any election integrity group to see this information?
Now, the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension also reporting earlier today the FBI has officially denied them access to evidence and case files related to the fatal shooting of Alex Preddy, along with other federal agent-involved shootings in Minneapolis. Reporting for the National News Desk, I'm Jeff Harris.